Theology actually inspires liberation once we understand the aim of theology. At theology's core lies the insistence that in order to understand ourselves in any meaningful way, we need to figure out our orientation to the unknown, from which all things come and which they return. Religious institutions like to provide us with quick and easy answers about the unknown, but the real theological task is discerning who we are and why we are here in this mysterious cosmos where life is created and then extinguished with no exceptions. How do we come to understand ourselves during the interim between life and death? Now, finding our authenticity, for example, speaks volumes about how we view and respond theologically to the unknown. Now, do we feel judged? Do we feel blessed? It's really a matter of theological orientation. As a white male, straight and privileged, I can say everything is working just fine in the cosmos. Thank you so very much. And I can go to church and tell God or whoever's responsible, gee, I appreciate the blessing. Keep up the good work. It's all good. Liberation movements are primarily about exercising a different orientation towards God, different from that of the established church institution. The church is taken out of its comfort zone, or the boat is rocked, when presented with different theological assumptions. The 1960s movement called liberation theology rose from impoverished neighborhood Catholic parishes in Latin America, which interpreted Jesus as an advocate for the poor rather than the God worshipped in lavish churches, those churches which merely reinforced the oppressive conditions of those who were voiceless and powerless. Liberation theologians accused the church of being married to colonialism and capitalism. Feeling outside and removed from the theology practiced in churches for the privileged, liberation theologians preached the message of Christianity as being one broad acceptance. In black theology, the emphasis turned to the blackness of Jesus. Black was beautiful, and the churches had conspired for too long to keep black culture removed from the mainstream. The revolution called black theology had the same message as all liberation movements, namely a broad acceptance by God. I entered theological school at the very beginning stages of feminist theology. It was the first time I ever heard the word misogynist. And I felt guilty, especially when I learned that by being male, it was automatically assumed that I was a misogynist, even though I was unaware of it. But I learned early on never to challenge those feminists in seminary. We read Mary Daly's Beyond God the Father, which attempted to finally expose the male image of God as nothing but a male conspiracy to keep women oppressed and away from wielding any authority in the church. We learned that when God is male, then male is God. Feminist theology, like all liberation theologies, could only find its voice through a new understanding of God or holiness or mystery. It meant that God was not partial to maleness or that God was even male. And the church's message had to incorporate the acceptance of everyone. In 1999, I was invited by the UUA to work on a committee that would interface with theological students and to provide for them insight to help strengthen their ministerial formation. It became a requirement for all theological students to appear before such a committee. I did this work for the next 8 years, but will always remember at the very beginning when a student from our seminary in Berkeley proclaimed himself as queer. I flinched, and I thought to myself, how dare he use that kind of language? There were 2 words I was taught never to utter, the N-word and queer. And when the student told our panel about his studies in queer theology, I thought some etiquette had been severely breached. He was certainly rocking my boat. I was not feeling comfortable, but, well, that was more than 10 years ago. I'd like to think I've come to learn some since that episode, starting with the word queer. Queer suggests strange, bizarre, sick, abnormal. Queer represents an insult hurled at gays and lesbians with threatening overtones that they do not fit in. If gays and lesbians use the term queer themselves, the insult is turned. It no longer marks shame, but becomes a sign of pride. Queer theology, then, explores the orientation between the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender person, explores their orientation with the unknown from which all things come and to which they return. Let's simply call it the divine. Up until recently, the GLBT person was taught shame by their churches. Their understanding of love and sexual expression did not fit in with the moral teachings of the universe. The church identified for them what the nature of the divine was all about. And they told them that the mystery was really no mystery at all, but the mystery was a judgmental God who would punish them for disobeying his laws. So queer theology begins by people having their own orientation to the divine without the bias of church authorities who are only too eager to interpret God through ancient and outdated doctrines. Queer theology begins in the same fashion as all liberation movements, reinterpreting church truth in a whole new context. Or as James McGreevy said in his Pursuit of the Priesthood, bringing Christianity into the postmodern world. All liberation movements endeavored to make the Christian message more suited to the times.